Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the interview series with Introverts Co. So I am super excited for today's guest, Lee Witt. And Lee is just hopping on camera real quick. But really quickly, let me just tell you about today's topic. Hey, Lee, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yes, I can.
Excellent.
Awesome. So today we are going to be doing just a quick conversation all about doing what scares you. So we had a little bit of a technical difficulty today hopping on, but you know what? It's kind of perfect because we are talking about doing what scares you. And in the past, I would have been having a complete meltdown. I would have been like, oh my God, my interview series is ruined. This is crazy. I can't do this ever again. I have to hop off the online space. I would have had all these crazy stories coming up that would have happened because of fear of judgment, of people rejecting me. But you know what? Whatever. Tech is tech. I'm not great at it, but whatever. I'm not scared of it. So, without further ado, Lee, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And what a great opportunity it is to practice what we're talking about, because technology, you just never know. And I'm the same way. It bothers me far more than performing. I mean, the actual performance is no problem, but the technology is always something. But my name is Lee Witt, and I have 33 years of experience in corporate America. My wife and I built a cover band, and we took it across North America for 18 years. I've written 4 books. And most recently, last April, I took second place in a men's physique competition, Masters Physique, and I'll be doing that again this coming April. So it's a busy little life, but I'm really glad to be here.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you were able to take some time out of your busy life to come talk with us today. So it sounds like you've accomplished quite a bit in your lifetime. And so I want to quickly touch on today, when you come across all these different people and when you've experienced all these different things, how has fear how has fear appeared in your life? And how have you been able to not let that fear get in the way of accomplishing all of these things? And we're going to kind of move a little bit backwards and talk about how other people can take what you've learned in your experience and apply that to their own experience. But I'd love to hear from you how fear has played a role.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. It's important, I think, to recognize fear when we come across it. And essentially, I see fear as a conversation that you're having in your head. Um, and it's often about what we think is going to happen, when in fact we don't know what's going to happen. So we get this future projection and we get out of the present moment where life is lived, and we start to fixate on the things that could go wrong. And so the way through fear is through focus. So focus occurs when clarity, concentration, and action converge in the present moment to produce a result. In other words, you're clear on what you're supposed to do and you start doing it. And what happens is when you do that, oftentimes you get into this flow state and you end up forgetting you were even afraid a few minutes ago because you're so busy doing what you're supposed to do. So instead of going, what's going to happen to me, ask, what am I going to get done? And then when you get clear on what you're supposed to do, it's like it's maybe a bad example, but a fist fight. Let's just say somebody attacks you. Well, if you think it's coming, you're afraid. But once it starts, you're so busy doing what you need to do, fighting, looking at targets, that the fear goes away because you're busy doing what you need to do. So in my experience, recognizing when fear happens and then focusing on the actual thing that has to be done in the moment will propel you through it. And it's like walking through a paper thin mist. The fear is the mist and you just walk right through it and you get to the other side and you go, well, that wasn't so bad.
Right, absolutely. And I'd almost love to have you take like that whole idea of just focusing and getting through it, and apply it to what we just dealt with getting on this interview, Like
Yeah.
how many people would have just said, oh my God, like I can't do this right now. I'm freaking out. Like we knew it had to get done. We knew that we had a scheduled interview today. So we were not gonna let that fear stop us from doing our thing.
Well, you were awesome because you recognized exactly what was happening, and like you said, maybe in the past you might have panicked. And a tip for people who, when that happens, is to go, am I okay right now? I learned this from Navy SEALs. They go, they're in the middle of chaos and they go stuff. Am I right? Am I okay right now? Am I being attacked? No. Is there something coming? Is my house on fire? No. And so you go, okay, the technology's not working. What's next? How do we fix this? And you did that, and you moved moment to moment, and I followed your lead, and neither one of us got crazy. And in the past, I'm very conscientious like you, and I'm like, oh, I want this to work. And so yeah, in the moment, the whole thing is we need to get into the moment, because things that happened yesterday, we can't focus yesterday, and we can't focus later. We can only focus right now where life is lived. And you did that perfectly. You said, okay, this didn't work. Let's try this. Okay, let's see if that works. And that's basically a really good way to go through life, because you can only deal with the one thing at a time, and you take that next step, and then you adjust accordingly. And I thought you did that perfectly.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I actually want to tell a quick story. I think you'll get a kick out of this. So back in the day, back in college, when I was going through interviews, where I was the one being interviewed for jobs, I had an interview with Amazon, and it was for a great logistics opportunity. I really wanted to get the offer, but the way that they did the first round interviews was it was like it was sort of like Zoom, but it predated Zoom. It was before Zoom was even available. So the way it was set up was it was a pre-recorded question, and you had 3 opportunities to record your answer to each question. And then you also had 3 practice rounds, like prior to submitting the final question response. So at the time, I was terrified of being on camera. I was terrified of interviews, and I thought that I was going to fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was more than qualified for that job, if it had panned out. I knew my stuff. I'm really good at supply chain. I knew that I was more than qualified. I had the grades. I was on the dean's list. I had whatever. I had everything that was in my corner, except I was scared of getting on camera. So anyway, it's the day of the interview. I'm all ready. I have my makeup done. My hair looks great. I'm all dressed to the nines. I sit down in my roommate's room at my desk, or at her desk, and I somehow skipped all of the practices. I skipped all of the questions, or all of the you had 3 tries. All
Mm-hmm.
the 3 tries, I go right to the final question. And it's my first response. And I realize what's going on right in the middle of this. And my fear kicked in so hard. Like I forgot that I was qualified. I forgot that I practiced. I forgot that I knew everything there was to know about Amazon. And I panicked, and I look at the camera and I go, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's what I
That
said.
was it.
And
The end.
I realized what I just said on camera to an interviewer, and I proceeded to just answer the question really quickly, right? So now the rest of the interview, I'm super flustered, I'm freaking out. I can't believe I just did this. But at this point, I'm just in the thick of it, right?
Right.
So I just kept answering all the questions to the best of my ability, even though like now my fear is totally heightened. And 2 days later, I get a call from them asking me to come in for a second round interview.
Mm-hmm.
And so my point in telling that story is my fear kicked in. I freaked out, but then once I actually still managed to get that job, I still managed to get to the next round, I realized like, I can't mess this up. I really can't mess this up. I've already had the worst possible thing happen to me. Worst case scenario, it did not get worse than that in an interview.
Mhm.
But I still managed to get pushed through to the next round. So from there, I went on to have, I think, 38 interviews. I ended up getting like 9 or 10 job offers out of all of that.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful that that was my very first interview experience, because I literally got the worst case thing out of the way. And after that, I was no longer afraid of what could happen because I'd already seen it. So I'd love to hear you speak to that and hear you. It's kind of a silly story, but it's it's a good example of how how fear really can impact the way that we show up. But then once we know sort of the worst case scenario, it ends up not being all that bad often.
Yeah, well, I really take two things from that. And the first is you're right, the worst case scenario, it's often good to run that through your mind. And often the worst case is not the worst case. I mean, you moved it through to the second round of interviews. So the worst didn't even happen. And the other thing is, you know, it's hard to beat preparation when you can control the variables, because a lot of things, there's going to be things that come up like this morning, the technology, you know, but
Mhm.
what can we control? And if you control what you can control and then practice, you know, your interviewing skills, or, oh gosh, what if I drop an F-bomb? How do I recover? I mean, you know, or what, how do you know, you just have to kind of be ready. And one of the really great tools that we can use through this is visualization, you know, and actually looking ahead and seeing, you know, how can I anticipate what might go wrong, and what do I want to have happen? And, you know, and how we carry ourselves gives us a lot of bravery, and how we, you know, how we structure our physiology. And so it's both mental and physical, but you're right. It's sometimes we get paralyzed by when something happens and you just go, oh my God, and you freeze. You know, well,
Mhm.
that's when it's good to ask, you know, am I okay right now? Yeah, I'm just frozen. Okay. So let's move through that and go to the next thing. And often you find that, you know, it works out. And then even later on, you look back at it and you end up laughing, you know, for the
Right.
most of the time, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I was so mortified. I was 20, 21 years old, whatever, like terrified of my own shadow. Never had an interview before. And my very first thing that I ever said was an F-bomb. Like, go figure.
That's beautiful. That's perfect.
Right. And then I love what you said about how the worst case scenario often doesn't actually end up manifesting. It's, yeah, and even if it was the worst case scenario, like the worst case scenario at the end of the day was I didn't get the offer.
Right.
Is
Right.
that really all that bad? Like, I did end up getting an offer from them and I didn't even take it. So it either way, it didn't end up mattering.
Right.
But what I took away from that, and I really truly believe you're always either getting the results you want or the lessons that you need.
Right.
I learned a lot from that experience, namely how to control my F bombs when things don't go according to plan. But you like just finding that momentum and just collecting yourself. I think if I could go back and talk to myself during that period and just coach myself through it, I think the first thing that I would say was, Steph, take a deep breath. It is okay.
Yeah.
You are fine. Now let's just answer the question and move forward,
Yeah, and
right?
and and breathing, you know, we take it for granted, but try living without it. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, seriously. I mean, sometimes we just, when we start to panic, we forget to breathe, and we certainly are not breathing deeply. And the more you can, the more your physiology relaxes, and the more clarity you can get mentally. So breathing is important. And if that's all you do, if you just stop and go, oh, I just screwed up, but a couple of deep breaths, you know, and then you move on. But it's, you know, we go, oh, breathing, who cares about that? Well, you know, it's pretty important, because
Yeah,
if you don't do it, you're dead. So 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 you didn't know, you handled it really well. And something I've heard you say and post on Instagram too is, It's not the things that we do so much that we regret. It's the things we don't do. And as a 68-year-old man, I can tell you that's for sure, for real, because I can't think of anything that I regretted doing, really, because I did, like
Right.
you said, learn the lessons from it. But the things that I might have not done, they maybe that girl I didn't talk to in college, or that opportunity I didn't take, or that interview I didn't go for, or that thing that's always in the back of your mind, where you go, gosh, I wonder what would have happened. And you don't want any of those I wonder what would have happened when you get to the end of
Right.
your life. You want to know what would have happened by actually trying it. And
Absolutely. And like literally there's no way of ever being able to know there's no way of ever knowing what could have happened. So, you know, what I try to do for myself, and I'd love to hear what you do, is I try to think through, what is the best case scenario if I go for this?
mm-hmm,
And what is the worst case?
mm-hmm,
And then I ask myself, can I live with the worst case scenario? And can I live without the best case scenario? And that's kind of like my barometer of deciding whether or not I decide to take action. Sometimes, you know, I can I can live with the worst case scenario, but I don't really care that much about the best case scenario. And so I won't take action because it's not I don't need it.
right, right,
But a lot of the times when I'm like really freaking out about something and really stressed, like and feeling full of fear, a lot of the times the best case scenario to me is something I want so badly. And I would rather take a chance, take a leap of faith and see if I can actually make that happen. Um, versus just wondering what if, because 9 times out of 10 the worst case scenario doesn't actually end up happening. Um but on the flip side, 9 times out of 10, even if the best case scenario doesn't happen, it's going to be better than where I am right now.
mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think I spend a moment briefly on the worst case scenario. I go, what's the worst case? And then I totally wipe that away. And then I lock in. I absolutely get complete maniacal focus on the thing that I want, and I accept nothing less. I will go after it, and I will I don't see any kind of failure. I go, here's how it's going to go. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how it's going to look. And everybody's going to be so happy when it works out for me, because I'm going to add value and productivity no matter what happens. So I know I don't even entertain the idea that it's not going to work, other than just a brief moment. I'll think, okay, what's the worst could happen here? I don't get the job, or I don't get the thing, or whatever it is I'm going for. But I've done so much. I've had so many amazing victories simply because, nobody gave us a chance. I took this little cover band that we built. We were playing toilets, dives for people with no teeth. Drunks, at 1 a.m, you're knee deep in cheap beer. And I took this thing over 18 years to Key Arena for 10,000 people, playing for NFL owners, being flown all over, because my wife and I would not accept anything less. People would quit. Didn't matter. Go, go, go. And it's amazing. And the same thing with writing books. If you just, this is what's going to happen. And you just do it. And it's an offensive mindset. It's like, and I'm sorry I'm monologuing, but it's
No.
worth mentioning. There's two kinds of people in the world. And the first kind of person wakes up in the morning and they go, what's going to happen to me today? What's going to happen to me? And then the second kind of person wakes up in the morning and goes, what am I going to get done? The first kind of person, what's going to happen to me, is reactive. It's fear-based. It's like, oh no, what's going to happen? The second kind of person, what am I going to get done? It's proactive. It's aggressive. It propels you into forward motion, into activity. And that's where success lies. And you, once you make that a habit, it's, I act, I don't react. I strike, I don't evade. It's always, you're always attacking, there's no defense. And it's not in a military way. It's in a way where everybody's going to win because you're adding value. So that's my monologue. But,
I love that. I think that's such an important point that you're making, because I think at the end of the day, when you're in this mindset of like, every step that I take however small, however large, is moving me forward.
Mhm.
Like when you truly believe that like there's only up from here, there's only forward from here, you can't, you might not get what you want right away. Like you didn't take that cover band from, the 1 a.m. dive bar nights to arenas overnight.
Right.
You
Right.
were moving one step closer to that. Always, because every action that you take was never going to move you backwards and move you back towards being in those dive bars. It was always moving you forward. It was always moving you ahead towards that next little milestone.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. And there's always the self-doubt that's going to creep in. And a lot of times for introverts, that happens, we're thinking, oh gosh, uh, and the way through that is to start asking a better question. And it's simply, who better than me to do this? Who better? It's like, and what do these people need from me? If it's entertainment or if it's knowledge or if it's inspiration or whatever it is, get out of yourself and go, what do these people need? Because then you're not thinking about, what do they think of me? How do I look? Am I doing okay? And it's like because I've spoken for thousands of people, and you get out of yourself and you go and you look at them and you go, what do they need from me? How can I help these people? And then you forget about how you look and what you sound like, and it's really like you're adding value at every turn, and everybody wins.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point that you make there too, because when you're truly being of service and when you're truly here to like help other people, you can't fail. The only failure is to not do the thing, to
Right.
not do something that adds value. And so when you take yourself out of the equation, not only do you realize like you're part of this thing that's so much bigger than yourself,
Mm-hmm.
um, but you kind of, there's other people with skin in the game and you don't want to let them down,
Right.
right? And so whether it's with your music or with writing your books or with coaching or whatever it is that you're doing, if you take the mindset of, I've committed to do this thing and I know that it can help other people, like now you're here for a bigger collective cause, and now you're here to actually help people. You can't fail them. If you show up, you cannot fail them. You cannot F this up.
Right. And
So
you bring your best self. I mean, and that's all you can do. That's why we continue to work on ourselves, and continue to grow and develop, because we keep adding more and more, and then we have more to give away.
absolutely.
But I think you're doing a great service with your coaching, because I test out as an introvert. I mean, I'm all on all these stages and doing these things, but I don't get energy from other people usually. I have to go by myself to bring energy back, and I'm
Yeah.
very comfortable reading and writing and doing very solitary things. I don't need to be in front of people, but I'm comfortable. I've learned to be comfortable doing it from just doing it
Right.
for so long. But it's not something that I crave or need. And I think you've really touched on something with the whole idea of helping introverts function more effectively, and to not feel bad for being who they are. And it's because there's who was it, Susan Cain, that wrote the book about, I think, introversion, and it's really, we need every kind of person. And what you're doing, I think, is you're really helping people to be okay with who they are, and then you're giving them skills and tips about how to function even more effectively. And it has to feel good for you to be able to be doing this.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I mean, and then I want to bring it back to you because you are the guest of honor. But for me, um, a lot of this is self-coaching. A lot of what I do for introverts, this is what I need. This is the stuff that I wish somebody had put together for me for so many years, because for the longest time I was afraid of getting on the phone. I was afraid to ask my husband to help out around the house. I was afraid to tell my mom that, and Mom, I know you're gonna watch the replay, so hello. Um, I was afraid to tell my mom how I wanted my wedding to look. Like just the littlest things to the biggest things. Yeah, I was unhappy at my job for 3 years because my boss was friends with my parents and I didn't want to offend them. And like there's just so many little things that like I didn't do, so many opportunities that I didn't take because I was so worried about how other people would perceive them because
Sure.
I was so stuck up here, like so stuck in my brain. And so I want to give other introverts the skills and the confidence to be able to put themselves out there and just recognize that like you belong in this world and you are an incredible human being, and your introversion is honestly a beautiful strength and a beautiful gift. And I know a lot of extroverts, many of my friends are extroverts, who are always just like, you're so thoughtful, like you think so, like I wish I was more like you. So what I want introverts to take away from this is like everyone's their own unique person and you just get to show up in the world however you see fit, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
um
And you bring that present moment awareness as an introvert. I mean, because you are running the stories in your head. Well, everybody's running stories in their head, but the extroverts often just blurt it out.
yeah,
But being aware that here's what's going on in my head. Okay, what's useful about this? What's not useful about this? And how can I use what's going on to better myself and the circumstances and the people around me? And and it's so much we're living so much yesterday and tomorrow that and tomorrow is where all the fear comes in because we're afraid what's
yeah,
going to happen. And then, oh my gosh, no, this thing happened the other day, I'll never recover from it or whatever. And it doesn't matter because right now is where life is lived, and we've lost a lot of that. We're so concerned about you know how things are going to appear and what's going to happen. And it's just like, take those steps. What do I need to be doing right now? Do that, focus on that, and continue. And if you're focusing on the right things, oh man, you can get a whole lot done. It's pretty incredible.
absolutely. So I would love to know like just a couple things is, first of all, you said that you're an introvert, which I mean that's obviously part of how we connected, but how have you managed to put yourself out there in so many incredible ways? And what would you say to other introverts that like are in this headspace of I can't or I shouldn't, or people are gonna judge me or I'll fail? Like what do you say to those people?
Well, for me, the the um the idea of letting fear stop me just, to me, I can't live with that. So actually I've gone bungee jumping and skydiving and done all this stuff because I was afraid of heights. And if something scares me, I have to do it. I must do it. And it's just, and I think it has to do with the testosterone or something. That might be a male thing, but I've grown up in sports and athletics, and I just, the idea of something stopping me because of being afraid, I can't, I don't want to live with that. It's harder for me to live with the fear than it is to actually face the fear. So
Mhm.
I guess if I was going to coach an introvert around that, I would just say, well, how do you, I know sometimes it's safer to stay afraid and not do the thing, but how do you feel about yourself? I mean, how do you actually feel? How does it affect your self-esteem, and how does it affect your self-worth? And if it doesn't affect it, that's fine. But for me, I must do the thing that scares me.
Right.
I'm just not, a man in my eyes. And I know that sounds old fashioned and old school and maybe
No, you're
silly.
my husband, so I get it.
Yeah, but it's just I can't. How could I back down and ever live with myself again? So that's kind of where that comes from with me. And with other folks, they might look at it differently. But I think it just, like we've talked about, very little horrible happens when you face your fear. I mean, it's just, and if it doesn't work out the way you want, generally no one dies. It's not the end of the
Right.
world, and you take a lesson forward. So I suggest getting out there, designing a plan, what you want to do. I mean, you don't have to live your life randomly. I believe in living intentionally, but have a plan, have targets you want to hit, execute on those targets, and you find that as life goes on, wow, I did that, and I did that, and I did that. Wow, and even while you're doing it, it may not kick in, but it's like, oh gosh, you look back and you go, wow, that was quite a life we had there.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so amazing. Like I bet as you were writing like your description of what you've accomplished for the application, it probably is just like, wow, like I did all of this. Like, look at this. And
Yeah,
I can imagine when you were, 15, 20, even 30, 40 years old, like
yeah,
might not have ever pictured that you'd be at this point in your life where you are now, because you don't, like you said, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's coming tomorrow. But if you dial in on the present moment and you do what needs to be done, all of a sudden you get to be Lee looking back at all the amazing you've accomplished, like written books, played arenas, you competed in a fitness competition and won.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's
you,
it's it's really interesting, and something I'm glad you said this, because I point out to I coach a lot of people, and a lot of them are in their 30s and 40s, and I tell them, and this is true, I really didn't hit my stride till my 50s. I mean, seriously, yeah, you think, well, gosh, that seems really old, but I was always building myself. I was always reading, I was always working out, I was always studying, I was always consulting, I was always becoming more, and then all of a sudden, laptops come into play, the internet comes into play. All of a sudden, it's really easy to write books because you're not on a typewriter. It's all these different things. Oh, keyboards, amazing electronics. All this stuff comes in, and then you go, oh my God, this isn't even hard anymore. And so you build on the things that are given to you with the skills that you bring. And once I turned 50, it was just like sail and off
wow.
into the distance. And the other thing I wanted to bring up too for introverts, because I coach people on this, is that when someone asks you to describe yourself, you should practice it. It should just roll off the tongue. Like, I can give you those accomplishments, the books and the arenas and all that stuff. But if somebody goes, well, describe yourself, and they go, well, I'm attractive, intelligent, talented, literate, funny, and tough. I mean, it just
Whoa.
rolls
Whoa.
off the top. I'm attractive, intelligent, talented, literate, funny, and tough. And people go, oh, well, okay, buddy. But why not? Why not have that at the tip of your tongue? And it's so ingrained that I believe those things, and I can prove them in real life. And and,
Wow.
and
I love
so make that list of what you want to be, and then what do you need to do to be those things? What do you need to be literate? What do you need to be attractive, intelligent, and talented? What do you need to be funny? What do you need to be tough? And then design that, and then become that. And
it.
it's doable. It really is, but you got to be conscious, and you have to be aware, and you have to actually kind of have a plan.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings me to like one last thought, and then we can kind of wrap up, because I want you to tell everyone how they can work with you if they want to hire you. And I also want to hear about your books. Um, okay, so you said, you have people say I am and then insert all the things.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I love to talk about in with my own students is I always say, stop saying I will.
Right.
Stop saying I'm gonna. Stop saying I want to. Nobody gives a shit. Throw out those words. They're not real, and they're probably not gonna happen.
Right.
If you start saying I am,
Right.
I don't want to be perceived as a liar or like a bullshitter. So if you start saying I am this, I am amazing, I am hardworking, you want people to see you as an honest, trustworthy human being. So you're going to start being that almost like by default. So I'd love to hear you speak to that.
Oh, I love that. I love that, because you're pulling the future you into the present you, and there's no reason not to do that. Why
Right.
you make the determination and the decision. This is who I am right now going forward. And yeah, that the list that you make, it can be whatever you want it to be. But yes, you actualize that in the present, you become
Mhm.
that. You go, yeah, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a musician, I'm an athlete, I'm all these different things, I'm a coach. And you turn those into reality, but you have to actually act. It's not even acting as if it's not, I don't say act, people go fake it till you make it. No,
Right.
it's fake it till you become it. And you can
Right.
become it sooner rather than later. And
Uh,
and so you become your best self. Decide what that looks like, decide what it is, take steps towards being it, but already think of yourself that way. Already
Right.
think you're right. It's not I'm will or I'm going to do this. It's like I am this. And
Right.
here's the proof. And yeah, it's amazing how much more quickly you can accomplish things when it's kind of already there in your head.
Right. And if you just ask yourself, what would that version of myself do?
Hmm.
Do that. Just do that.
Yeah.
Like version of myself that is a powerful communication coach for introverts, which is who I am. She shows up here and she hops on Zoom when the Facebook video doesn't work, right?
Right.
That's what she doesn't let technology run her over. That's the version of myself that was saying I am going to be a coach for introverts.
Right.
But I threw that away. Now I am, and this is what I am doing. So
Exactly. No,
we brought
exactly.
it full circle.
Yeah, you nailed it. No, you totally nailed it. And yeah, no, you're providing a really great service to people. And I think you should be proud and you should feel good. And yeah, it's only going to get even better and better as you continue on and your profile grows. So yeah, I'm excited for you.
Well, thank you, Lee, and thank you for being here. So really quick before I let you go, I want to know number one, what are the names of your books so that I can go on Amazon right now
Okay.
um, and order them from my would have been employer?
Well, the first book I wrote in 2008, and it was called Become Unstoppable, Take a Different Stance in Life to Stand Up, Stand Out, and Deliver Your Best. The second book was actually about the band. It was called The Brickhouse Band, How an Ordinary Midlife Couple Created a Business Phenomenon. And
Uh,
it kind of told the story. It's more of a leadership book of how, take people and through this process. And if you're going to lead a group, here's what has to happen. And I wrote that in 2010, and we had actually amazing success after after I wrote the book. So I should have maybe written it later. And then my third book was called Swagger at 60. How to let's see, the subtitle is I've got it here. Swagger at 60. Use the tools of mental toughness to serve and succeed at any age. So I wrote that. That must have been 8 years ago when I turned 60. I can't wait to be savage at 70. Uh,
are you
and
already book?
I'm 68 now, but I'm counting down. I'm 16 months from 70, and I can't wait. Because oh my God, imagine getting on a bodybuilding stage at 70 in a pair of board shorts. You talk about fear. Oh, let me tell you, that'll motivate you.
I
And the
love
last book that I wrote was actually co-written with Doug Plank. He's a former Chicago Bear, uh, incredible football player, incredible story, and it's called Walk the Plank. And
love, love the
yeah,
play on.
yeah, and he's incredible. We're hoping to do some work together, maybe this spring, and do some coaching together. And
Awesome.
but yeah, just a complete stud, And so those are the 4 books I've written. I might write something when I get to be 70. We'll see. But I continue to. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's just about sharing what you know, and it's putting it down there. So you create a little bit of a legacy, and if anybody reads it, great. If not, great. It's the idea is just get it down, get it out of your head onto paper, and it might help somebody. So
I love that. And then how can people work with you if they want to hire you for coaching?
probably the best way to get me is on Instagram at Lee Witt Fit, LeeWittFit. That's my Instagram handle. They can contact me there or leewitt.com. www.leewitt.com is one email you can hit me at. That's an easy one. But I'd love to work with folks. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It starts as exercise and nutrition, and it always ends up life coaching. It always ends up but I've got
That's
some
that's the way it goes.
I've got a guy who's got 1 million followers on YouTube, 1 million followers
I
on
remember
YouTube.
that. That is insane.
I got another guy's a Harvard graduate. I've got guys that are, really, really highly accomplished people, and it's great
Mhm.
because a lot of them are young, and I have things that they just don't know, and they're going to
Right.
far surpass me at the end of the day, but they're not there yet. So I can kind of bring them along a little bit and help them in business and things that they might not have thought of. So it's
Love it.
working out really well.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so grateful that you were able to give me some time today. And I know the community is going to love this once they get to catch the replay. Um, so any final thoughts for introverts or just in general about conquering your fear, facing your fear, whatever you want to share?
Sure, and thank you for having me today. It's a lot of fun.
Of
Uh,
course.
there's kind of a mantra with this offensive mindset that I teach that I think is worth remembering, and it's simply things don't happen to me, I happen to things. And
Love it.
so you're never a victim, because if things are happening to me, oh no, it's never about that. Things don't happen to me, I happen to things. And I remember the first female vice president at the Boeing company one day in the 1980s. And I asked her, I said, Carolyn, oh my God, it must be so hard being the only woman vice president, in a male dominated company. I go, "Oh, it must be a lot of headaches." And she looked at me, and the best statement I ever heard, she goes, "I don't have headaches, I give headaches."
Oh man.
I was just
Oh,
like, I got you, I got you. But that was the greatest response from the only woman vice president in a male dominated engineering manufacturing company.
yeah.
It was
Love,
priceless. So I'll leave you with that.
I love that. I might have to borrow that line from her, but I will give her credit where credit is due. Thank you so much, Lee. It was so amazing having you, and I'm sure that our paths will continue to cross in the future. I'm sure you will be a guest again in the future, and next time we'll get the tech right. But for now, have an amazing rest of your Tuesday. Happy Valentine's Day,
Same to
uh,
you.
and have just an amazing week.
Thank you so much. You as well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Bye bye.
Bye bye.